Good day, students. Today we'll be looking at joint and muscles. And before we start today's topic, I want somebody to tell us where we stopped last lesson, when we did vertebra and bones. Yes, you. Yes. Vertebrae, yes. Backbones, it's okay. There are 5 types, yes. Name them. Thoracic, yes. Cervical, yes. Lumbar, yes. Sacral, yes. Caudal, yes, thank you. So today, joint and muscles. Our learning objectives for today are listed below. At the end of the class, you are expected to be able to define skeleton, list the functions of the skeleton. You should be able to define muscles and state the types, define joints and types. Then you should be able to draw and label a movable joint. Definition. Joint. A joint is a point or place where 2 or more bones meet or articulate. I'll take it again. A joint is a point where 2 or more bones meet or articulate. That is the definition. Types of joints and classification. Joints can be classified based on their structures and the amount of movement they perform into 3. Joints can be classified based on their structures and the amount of movement they perform into 3. Namely, fibrous joint, cartilaginous joint, synovial joint. Fibrous joint, cartilaginous joint, and synovial joint. Now we can see the diagram of the fibrous joint there. They are held together by a ligament. They vary in length, but it's longer than the suture joint. Fibrous joints are held together by a ligament, and the tissues vary in length, but longer than the suture. Fibrous joints are held together by connective tissues made of strong and tough fiber. Fibrous joints permit no movement. That is, it does not allow movement. It does not allow movement. And that type of joint that does not allow movement is called a suture joint, like the one present in the skull. When there is no movement in a joint, it is called a movable joint. That is, the joint does not move, such as the one present in the skull. Synovial joint. That is the image of the synovial joint we are seeing there. Here we have something like a cartilage preventing bones from touching each other. Synovial joint is a movable joint. Synovial joint is a what? Movable joint. That is, it permits movement and certain direction. Now, they contain a cavity filled with fluid. Synovial joint contain a cavity filled with fluid, and that fluid is called synovial fluid. They move freely in one or more direction. As a movable joint, it can move in one or more direction. It also permits circular or linear movement. That means the joint can move in 360-degree or 180-degree movement. Example of a movable joint, we have the hinge joint, the ball and socket joint. Hinge joint, ball and socket joint, they are typical example of movable joint. As we can see the diagram here, we have a movable joint, hinge. Now the structure shows the bone of the leg, the articular cartilage, the synovial membrane that produces the fluid, the joint cavity containing synovial fluid, and the bones to which it is attached. Hinge joint, a movable joint like I said before, it permits movement of bone in one direction. Permits movement of bone in one direction. An example is the bending of the ulna and the humerus in the elbow. Bending of the ulna and humerus in the elbow. That is, when you move your forearm up and down, you see the movement at the joint there at the elbow. Example of a movable joint is the one called ball and socket. Ball and socket joint can be found in the shoulder, where the femur fits into the glenoid cavity here to form a ball and socket. The head of the femur here articulates with the socket to provide the ball and socket, to provide a movable joint in a circular direction. The ball and socket joint permits movement of the femur and the pelvic girdle in the hips. That is, you can find ball and socket joints at the shoulder and the hip. Find it in the shoulder and the hip. Other movable joints, aside from the hinge joint and the ball and socket joint, are the pivot joint. Pivot joint is located between the ulna and the radius. They permit rotational movements. We also have gliding joint that is found between the shoulder and the collar bone. These allow sliding movements. The components of joints. Joints are made up of the following parts: the ligaments that connect bone to prevent dislocation during movement. Cartilage is another component. The cartilage acts as a shock absorber, preventing shock or preventing bones from rubbing against one another. Synovial membrane, it secretes synovial fluid that lubricates the movement. Joint capsule encloses the joint cavity, that is, joint cavity is placed in then the synovial fluid that acts as a lubricant, reducing friction, and it supplies nutrients. Any question before we move on to the muscles? Yes. The ball and socket joint, like I said, can be found in the shoulder and the hip. The head of the femur or the humerus fits into the glenoid cavity, or what we call the scapular bone in the shoulder, to permit that circular movement. Is that understood? Now let us go to muscles. Muscle is defined as a long thread-like fiber arranged in bundles and enclosed by a sheet of connective tissue. a long thread-like fiber arranged in bundles and enclosed by a sheet of connective tissue. Muscles are joined to bone by means of what we call tendon. Without tendons, muscle cannot be joined. There are different types of muscles. Basically, we have three types of muscles, namely smooth muscles, cardiac muscles, and skeletal muscles. Three types of muscles: smooth muscles, cardiac muscles, and skeletal muscles. Smooth muscles. Smooth muscles can be found under involuntary control. Involuntary, that is, not willing. It can be found in the wall of the gut, the respiratory, and blood vessels. When we say something is involuntary, you cannot control it. That is why you have it in the gut and the respiratory tract. It has a single nucleus. Collection of smooth muscle fiber are called sphincter muscles. They are called sphincter muscles. When we have smooth muscles coming together, more than one. Cardiac muscles. From the word cardiac. Yes, you can tell me where we have the cardiac. Yes, you. The heart, thank you. Cardiac muscles. It's also under involuntary control. It is found around the earth. It also has one nucleus. Cardiac muscles are unique. They are what? They are unique. The muscles will only stop contracting if they are starved of oxygen. That means if oxygen is lacking in the heart, that's why the cardiac muscle will stop working. So we need more oxygen. Skeletal muscles. Skeletal muscles is under voluntary control. Voluntary means you can control it. You can control it when you want. Unlike the other two muscles we have mentioned that are under involuntary control. Skeletal muscles are under voluntary control. It assists to move bones. It has many nucleus, unlike the cardiac muscles that has only one nucleus. Skeletal muscles is also called striated muscles. Now, the diagram we are seeing there is illustrating type of muscles. It's illustrating what? The type of muscles. The first one here is the cardiac. This is the skeletal, that is, and this is the smooth muscles. The smooth muscles and the skeletal muscles, the cardiac muscles. So those are the three types of muscles we have mentioned. Now, having discussed about the muscles, we want to look at the functions of the skeleton. Functions of the skeleton, which we are supposed to have discussed when we dealt with skeletal system. And because of time, we couldn't do that. Now, today we are looking at the functions of the skeleton. How do we define skeleton the last time we met? Yes, you. Framework, that provides rigidity, shape, and support. Thank you. Skeleton is defined as a framework that provides rigidity, shape, and good. Now, among the functions of the skeleton, we have the following. The skeleton protects the delicate organ in the body, such as the skull, protects the brain. The skeleton protects the delicate organs in the body, such as the skull protects the brain. 2. It gives shape to the body and supports the body weight. Give shape to the body and supports the body weight. 3. The skeleton brings about movement by acting as lever. It brings about movement by acting as lever. The skeleton helps to bring about breathing with the aid of the rib cage, the diaphragm, and the intercostal muscles. The skeleton helps to bring about breathing with the aid of the rib cage, diaphragm, and the intercostal muscles. Among the function of the skeleton, we have the exoskeleton, that is skeleton present outside the body of organism, which can be found in insects. Now, that exoskeleton in insects or in arthropods prevents desiccation or drying up. It prevents them from losing water from the body. Exoskeleton in arthropods prevents drying or desiccation, that is, the animals with this type of skeleton does not lose water to the atmosphere. Movement at a joint. Movement at a joint. Where we have movable joints that moves, the mechanism, the process by which movement is brought about is what we want to discuss. There can be no movement at a joint without the muscles. There can be no movement at a joint without the muscles. And these muscles are called antagonistic. They are called what? Antagonistic. They work in opposite directions. Now let's see how this is done. Muscle brings about movement of bones at a joint. The muscles are attached to bone by connective tissues called tendons. Muscles are attached to bones by connective tissues called tendons. Muscles work against each other, that is, they work against each other, they are antagonistic. When one is contracting, the other is relaxing. That's what is antagonistic. When one muscle contracts, the other relaxes. When one muscle contracts, the other relaxes. Like the one we have in the arm. When you contract, one is contracting, the other is relaxing. That is the work of the biceps and tricep muscles. The muscle that causes bending is called the flexor, while the one that straightens is called extensor. The muscle that causes bending of the arm is called the flexor muscles, while the one that straightens is called extensor. The biceps and tricep muscles that aid the movement of the forearm are called antagonistic muscles because they work in opposite direction. When you bend your arm, a muscle contracts. When you straighten it, the muscle is involved. So the two muscles that are involved in bending and straightening of the arm are called biceps and tricep muscle. Now we can see the illustration on the board there. This is bending of the arm. When it bends, the bicep muscle contracts, while this is relaxing the triceps. The same thing happens to the bone of the lower leg. The biceps relax, the triceps contracts. So movement at the elbow is caused by the contraction and relaxation of the biceps and triceps muscles. At this point, I want us to look at that diagram very well. See where the bicep is placed and see where the tricep is placed. And you can see the tendon there. You can see the tendon there. Exactly. You can see the tendon there. Without those tendons, movement may not be possible. Any question? Yes? Yes. The wrist has the type of joints too called hinge joint, gliding joint. The wrist, yes, it has joint. That is why you are able to twist your wrist. Now our assignment, the first one, you have to make a label diagram of the forearm showing the antagonistic muscles. Make a label diagram of the forearm showing the antagonistic muscles. 2. List 5 functions of the skeleton. List 5 functions of the skeleton. These assignments are expected to be attempted and submitted to my email taufik.jinodu@greenlandhall.org. The reference book for us today is Fundamental Biology by M.V. Roberts, our Normal College Biology by Idodo Ume. Thank you very much.